and welcome to today's webinar, How to Incentivize Sustainability Through KPIs. My name is Linda Broad, and I am the Community Manager for the Employee Engagement Working Group here at 2 Degrees. I'd like to introduce you to Adam Elman of Marks & Spencer, who will be presenting today. Just technical points before we get going. You can submit questions to me at any point by typing into the Q&A box on the bottom right-hand side of your screen and pressing send. I'll then ask Adam these questions after his presentation at the end. And if you have any problems with the technology or audio during the presentation, please use the chat box on the right-hand side to send me a message. From our menu, just select to send the message to the host and I'll get back to you. I'll now over to Adam for today's session. Over to you, Adam.
Linda, thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody. Now, actually, not managed to get IT to work, so I think hopefully Lucinda's going to move the slides along for me.
No problem, Adam.
Just to explain who I am, so my job title is Head of Delivery for Plan A and Sustainable Business. Essentially, my role is to work right across the business at all levels to manage the overall delivery of Plan A, the governance, and really to work with colleagues within the supply chain, within our business to resolve issues, realise opportunities, and really drive on progress on Plan A. I have involvement with our communication and engagement team really in driving the engagement of colleagues across the business, and separately I also run our residential energy business. So that's a bit about me. Really cracking on, and I don't want to do too about Plan A itself because hopefully you know a fair bit. But what I'm going to do today is just cover Plan A very briefly, talk about the governance structure we've got and how KPIs forms part of that. Obviously, we can talk about incentives, different types of incentives that we've used and how we've implemented them, and touch on some of the wider engagement we do across Plan A, and then sort of wrap up on lessons learned. And then, as Lucinda said, we've got some time for questions at the end. If we can go on to the first slide, Lucinda. It was launched back in 2007, so we've recently celebrated our 5th anniversary, and it really was a 5-year plan when we first launched it, split across 5 pillars: climate change, waste, sustainable raw materials, fair partner, and health, and big bold commitments that we wanted to achieve within those pillars. The plan has since been extended. We extended it in 2010, so we added 18 new commitments and 2 new pillars. It will continue to evolve, and we'll continue to set new targets and raise the bar as we make progress. And to the next slide, Lucinda. Just in perspective, clearly we are a big business, but it really every part of our business we're trying to touch. So right across the value chain, so from customers' use of the product, going right back through the manufacturing and production of our products. You can see the numbers on screen there, but we've got around 2,000 factories at any one time, 20,000 farms. There's 2 million workers we estimate within our supply chain. We've got thousands of different raw materials, and of course we've got 75,000 employees and 21 million people that we're trying to engage. So it is big scale, and that's why actually for us sort of governance and use of incentives and anything else we can do to really drive progress is really key to moving us forward. If we can to the next slide, Lucinda. Our first question is why this and why incentivize performance? And actually, I'm always amazed still by the number of organisations and businesses that I speak to that don't measure in this space. We measure absolutely everything from really all the obvious stuff from carbon through to waste to all of our raw materials down to how many bits of paper we print. And it goes back to the old thing: if you can't manage, then you can't manage. And for us, that's really the key: is absolutely know where we're at, so we understand what progress we're making, what issues are, and how we really take action. And I'll come on to the governance in a bit more detail, but that for us is really key, and I think it is really key when you want to start talking about incentives. And for us, I guess we don't treat it any differently than anything else in our business. So is sustainability-wise environment any different than how we manage our sales performance, how we manage our margin performance, how we manage our stock availability performance? So for us, it's just part of our, it's just another measure within our business, and we treat it the same way as we treat that, what we call how we do business. So for us, it's really key in terms of just understanding who we are, and it really allows us to incentivize and do lots of other things in terms of driving performance. I will talk about different types of incentives a bit later, but different ones. But again, we incentivize our colleagues on their sales performance, on availability, on customer service. So for us, actually incentivizing around sustainability is just another measure we do and another incentive that we drive on our business, and we don't treat it any differently. So on to the next slide, and I apologise for the sort of complexity of the slide, but to set this in context of the overall governance that we have sitting around Plan A. One of the right in the early days was, in the top bar there, was spend a lot of time making sure for all these commitments, all these targets we set, that we had really clear understanding of the within the business. And many commitments are owned by one department or one or two individuals, but many of our commitments are spread right across the business and have multiple ownership. So having absolute clarity on ownership, clarity on scope. We're talking about a commitment. What do we mean? What's in scope? What's out of scope? What's got to be covered? And then where relevant, being absolutely clear on what the baseline data is. And I have to say, it took us a long time to get to that clarity where we knew all of that and we had it signed off by the relevant people across the business. We got that. It was really difficult then to out and drive performance because it was, you also struggled to know who was responsible, who was accountable, and they say, let alone incentivizing around it. We really didn't have the basics. So below that top box then, on the left-hand side, just giving an overview of the sort of governance meetings we have in place. So we have what we call executive business committee. That's the executive board plus a number of key individuals around the business that meet on a bi-monthly basis, really to sit down and understand how we're performing, discuss the strategy and resolve issues where need be. The additional how we do business committee is very similar. It meets on a monthly basis. It's all below, so it's key directors right across the business. So our HR director, our logistics director, our construction director, again, who meet to sit and discuss where we're at and try and keep moving things forward. Also visit our audit committee twice a year and our full PLC board at least once a year, and again, very much so we can discuss where we're at and understand the risks or understand what needs to be done to move things forward. And we'll have an external advisory board, so a number of the good and great from the sustainability world, from people like Jonathan Porritt, Professor Mohammed Yunus, who again meets two to three times a year, and actually I was with them this morning for a meeting, and again they're really scrutinising what we do. On the right-hand side there is the sort of tools we use. So and I'm going to cover some of this, but we have a monthly dashboard to go to those meetings. We do what's called risk ranking, which I'll come on to. We have regular review meetings with each of these different parts of the business that have these ownerships, committeeships. And then we have a formal process that we run half year and full year, which is done in conjunction with Ernst & Young, our external auditors, and our internal audit committee. And that's our sort of formal point to really sit down and understand the numbers and see where we're at to and get that signed off. And then really underneath that, we've got our remuneration committee, and that's because we do drive this into the cash bonus targets, which I'll talk through. So there's a lot of structure there, but because we have that clarity, it enables us to really incentivize and push forward. If we can then go over to the next slide. And you won't be able to see the detail, but just wanted to sort of briefly touch on the sort of monthly dashboard that we produce. And we go through how we're doing overall performance as a business. We give a summary, RAG status against every single commitment, highlighting where we've got challenges. And we go through key things we achieved last month and what our focus is for the month ahead. And then we sort of go into detail of customer insight and financials, what have you. So that's something we do on a regular basis, and that feeds into those committees. Okay, moving on to sort of objectives and incentives. If we can move to the next slide. I guess the first thing I want to say is, and hopefully it'll come out through the presentation, I'll pick it up at the end as well, is this is another tool for us. It's another great way of driving things forward, but just another tool. I think as a business, if this is your only way of driving progress, then you're always going to be struggling. The process I discussed before, and through the engagement which I'll come on to later, we're really trying to change the culture within M&S. It's about really striving to be the best in this space, really making sure we deliver on these big commitments and these big targets. So I think what we do incentivize, it is set in a background of a culture which is just about, we've got to do this, it's the right thing to do, and we can't fail. And so incentives work well, but as I say, I don't think you can just rely on them. In terms of putting incentives into sort of cash bonus, we thought long hard about how best to do this, and what we decided in the end is, rather than go out and say, right, we want everyone across the business to have an objective, that we would really target every single director in the business. Now, the reason we didn't go out and set a target for everyone individually is we were really concerned that as you got to either shop floor or parts of the business that wouldn't require to be as engaged in Plan A as other parts, that the objectives would be set really wouldn't be strong objectives. There would be things like just try and print less, or make sure you turn the lights off, and really wouldn't be very strong. And that's what we wanted to avoid. We wanted these to be something very serious in the same way as the other objectives we set are. By targeting every single director, what that means is they then feed it down through their organisation structure to the right people. We've seen that work really well. And all the objectives we have been specifically designed to deliver on multiple fronts. So actually, if we can go to the next slide. I've just given you a screen print of there's an article on the back of a press release last week. But in our clothing and food business areas, one of the big targets we set was around driving a Plan A attribute, so a Plan A quality into every single product that we sell. That's not to say they'll be the most sustainable products, but it'll have at least one feature. Of course, we're in for multiple features, but that really raises the bar across every single product. Why is that? Why do we think that's a great objective? Well, first of all, it feeds to every single buyer and every single merchandiser in our business. So it's something they're really thinking about as part of their day job. I think to engage their supply base. So actually, again, it's something which is driving into the supply base and is getting our suppliers to think about it. As we know that buying these products with these attributes, it starts to differentiate our products and give us competitive advantage. So that's what are these objectives. They deliver multiple benefits, and they really do try and hit lots of people and really change how we do things on a daily basis. And we've got lots of great examples now where our buyers are talking to the supply base, and they've got two suppliers who might have a very similar product, might be the same quality standards, the price might be the same, and it is these attributes, the environmental or ethical stance of the business or the product that is starting to win them the business. So we're having a lot of success in that way. If we can go to the next slide. What I said, we haven't driven it into every single employee across the business. It does cover all of our store colleagues. So all of our stores are targeted on energy efficiency because we do. That's something that every single colleague in store can be involved in some way, shape or form. And that has been really well received by them. And if I go to the next slide, we provide a lot of information to stores on their performing and how they're doing. So this is a screen grab from our energy management system. So anyone in store can go in, they can have a look at the performance of their store, they can have a look at the performance of their store against last year, against their target, they can compare themselves against other stores. There's all sorts of information they can get in real time, and they can get that down to the hour to really start to understand what is something strange going on in their store, what's a different store doing that they might be able to learn from. So really giving them the tools. So whilst we've took it in their bonus objective, we're really helping them understand how they can make a difference and how they're performing. And we're talking, so we can go on to the next slide, just to give you a wider insight into our reporting. We do in our stores called risk ranking. We run this across lots of different things, but it's really about giving stores information that compares them on a level basis with other stores. I can either look at bigger, smaller stores or stores that are very much the same as them. Have a risk ranking for Plan A, and this covers a whole host of metrics such as energy, waste recovery, amount of wrapping materials, bags for life, hangers recycled, how much printing paper they've used. So whilst we don't necessarily incentivize them in cash terms, there's a lot of competitiveness that goes into this. So they start to see, no one wants to be the worst performing store or the worst performing region. So this is really about adding a bit of competition, but again, also giving them that opportunity to understand who's doing better so that they can learn from it. But if we can go to the next slide, so out of the sort of cash and competitiveness, I think incentives we put are just about recognition. to people who are doing fantastic things. How can we recognise them? And we run we do this in lots of different ways, but the images you're seeing there are from our annual Plan A Awards, where we recognise people who've done fantastic things in terms of energy efficiency, volunteering, charity work, whatever it may be. And it's a really big thing. They get nominated by their colleagues. Colleagues have to write statements about why they're nominating them. It goes through a big review process with senior management across the business. And the winners and the shortlists are all limited up to a big event which Mark Bolland hosts. The awards are given out by senior directors across the business. Actually, we do give them a cheque, but it's a cheque that they can pass on to charity. Actually, they get a certificate. They get a lot of recognition from that, and that really drives a lot of within our business to do the right thing. And actually, how can you be the person that gets nominated or potentially wins an award next year? Just on that vein, if you can move over to the next slide, we as a business run a scheme called the Big Idea Scheme, which we run every month, where we ask colleagues across the business to giving us ideas around particular challenges. And we've run a number of Plan A challenges. The ones you can see, the one on the left with Dealey is around how do we recycle hangers, and the one on the right, Joanna Lumley, it was all around shopping. And you get fantastic response. So on the recent shopping one, I think we had 2,000 ideas submitted by colleagues across the business. And eventually they got judged by Mark after having gone through a short list. And the winner's going to come up, they'll spend their day in the office, they'll meet Mark, they'll meet other great people. And there'll be a lot of recognition that goes into our things like staff magazines, into our intranet, again, driving enthusiasm within our business to get involved and help drive things forward. And just to pick up on some of the wider engagement, again, it's a bit of a messy slide, but just to pick up on various things we do. So in the sort of top left box there, we communicate Plan A at every point we can. We do it with existing communication channels, so things like the staff magazine and through the intranet, but we all have dedicated channels, so we do dedicated Plan A newsletters and what have you. And you've got a picture of Mark there, so whenever Mark stands up to talk through quarterly results, how we're performing as a business, he'll talk about Plan A. We don't see it any differently, really. Just below that then, we often get in keynote speakers, so we've got Ellen MacArthur there and Zach Goldsmith, who come in, who really inspire our people and let us understand that we're not in a bubble, that other people are doing this, that really bring to life the issues and really do bring home how we're performing and really, as I say, enthuse our colleagues to keep going. We put lots of videos, you can see that in the top right there. We use a lot of them externally, but it's a great way of really getting messages out that people wouldn't see, what's happening on farms, what's happening out in the far-flung countries we source from, and really bring the emotion and things to life. And then we do lots of events in the office there, so you can see pictures of WWF run around our reception dressed up as gorillas and monkeys, and lots of fun activities to engage people. And we've also done lots whereby we've got a picture of the energy monitor there. So a couple of years ago, we gave every single member of staff an energy monitor, about 40,000 energy monitors. It cost several £1 million. We sell them, so we didn't get any benefit off of that. But we had a large workforce that went home, thought about energy efficiency in their homes, came back to work and started thinking about it in the workplace. So we installed a free loft installation a couple of years ago for about 4,000 staff. Again, giving back to our colleagues, but making them think about energy efficiency and the environment. And we also give all our colleagues a day's paid leave to go off and do volunteering. And they can choose what they do, but what we see is they tend to do it in groups. It's great for team building. They go out and have a fantastic day. The image I've got there is of the big beach clean, where we had some 6,500 members of staff go out earlier this year and clean beaches. And again, it works really well for us as a business because it builds on team building, and they really do understand a lot more about Plan A, come back very enthusiastic, and then they're eager to get involved. So just running up then, if we can go to the next slide, some of the key lessons learned for us really is measurement's absolutely key, otherwise you just can't manage what you're doing. Drawing the KPIs can be challenging, but getting the right ones and driving multiple benefits can do all fronts. As I said earlier, incentives are a fantastic tool, but shouldn't be your only solution, and they do come in different forms. And what it is, incentives particularly linked to cash bonuses, they absolutely have to be robust. When we've got our directors who have got a large slug of their bonus resting upon this, there can't be any ambiguity about the numbers or the target itself. And as I said before, make sure these targets delivered on multiple benefits. You don't get many opportunities to do things like bonus targets, so when you do, do the can with it to drive their great performance. That's it, me. Happy to take any questions, and hopefully you found that useful.
Thanks, Adam. That was really interesting. As I mentioned before, you can submit your questions to me on the right-hand side in the Q&A box. So we're going to kick off now with a question from Ben, who says, what kind of pushback did M&S experience when implementing sustainability KPIs within the organisation, and how was it overcome?
In terms of KPIs, I don't think we had a lot of pushback per se. I think it was more that them were relatively easy to go and do. Many of them were very difficult and took a long time to really understand how you could get the right KPI, how you could get the robust data to support that KPI. How do we make sure that the ever-changing business model that we are means that in 6 months' time that KPI is not going to be invalid and ill robust. So it took a long time, but because we had the governance structure in place and because we were really clear about what we wanted to get to, and because, as I say, through the governance structure, people were always being pushed to understand where we're at and what they needed to do to where they got to. I think people understood that actually, and we definitely saw this, people started to see that these KPIs and this data and reporting was a real benefit for them. But we had examples. I mean, our waste data, we decided 3 years in, really wasn't up to where we needed to be, and we completely re-baselined our data in year 3. But us really making sure that what we were doing was robust, and when we wanted to make teams that our claims were robust and that we really were pushing forward, because the last thing we wanted to do was ourselves.
Okay, getting a lot of questions through, so I'll try to get through as many as possible. Next question is from Ruth, who says, what KPIs does M&S use for measurement of environmental, economic and social dimensions of sustainability?
Right, big question. There are lots, really. So, I mean, if you've done so, it's worth having a look at our annual report, how we do business report. But we measure all the environmental data that you expect us to do in terms of carbon, in terms of waste, in terms of energy, in terms of recycling, in terms of carrier bag usage. So I think there are things you would expect, plus a load more. In terms of economic, we measure the business, what we call the business case for Plan A. When we started Plan A, we intended to invest £200 million a year. That's what we thought. £40 million a year, so £200 million over the first 5 years, and that's what it thought it would take to deliver Plan A without delivering any on-cost to our customers. And through measuring Plan A in the same way that we measure every other part of our business, so looking at our costs, looking at the benefit that we get back, and being maybe cost reduction, it might be more efficiency, it might be new business streams. So we measure all of that. Last year we've reported that they delivered last year a net benefit of £105 million to us as a business, and that's a net benefit. And that's just taking the numbers that we can put values against. So we know there's lots of other benefits, such as staff motivation, in terms of supply chain resilience, or even just things like getting planning permission. So we opened our biggest green store a few months ago in Cheshire Oaks. We would never have been able to build that store had it not been for all the environmental and et cetera, credentials that went in. So if you want more information about that, it's in our report, and we have published a white paper on it, which is also available on our website. In terms of the social benefit is a lot harder to track, and we do it in lots of different ways, but it's harder to get a common currency, if you like, to do comparisons against. We've got lots of information and analysis we do in terms of feedback from our colleagues in terms of motivation, how long they want to stay with M&S, in terms of level of training and wellness in our business, within our supply chain. We've got lots of projects we do in terms of going and doing training in our suppliers, and we start to see how that improves health, how it improves productivity. So it's a lot harder to do on the social side. One thing we're always looking at, but clearly we're always looking to measure our performance and make sure what we're doing is doing what we expect it to do, and hopefully delivering benefits both for us as a business, and both in terms of social benefit that we want to deliver. This
question is from Toby, who said, how important do you think leadership is? How do you incentivize if the leadership team are not on board?
It's a question we get asked a lot, and I think we've always been really lucky that, I think, do the right thing has always been very much part of the DNA of Marks and Spencer, going back 128 years, through the days of philanthropy, through to employee welfare. It's really been something that's been very close to the business. But always been lucky as well that, Stuart Rose, who was the chief exec that really started Plan A, and subsequently Mark Bolland, have been big supporters. So that's been beneficial to us. And what I would say is we've clearly got lots of other big supporters across our business, but certainly early days, and I wouldn't say, we're perfect today, but early days there were lots of people that thought, why are we doing this? It's a lot of money, we're putting the brand at risk, is it really what we should be focusing on? But I think through being able to track what we're doing, through being able to show how it delivers business benefit and the environmental, ethical, social benefits as well, we've been able to bring a lot of people on board. So our finance team, who actually enjoy crunching numbers, actually really like getting involved in Plan A because they can work within their business areas to understand performance, crunch the numbers, and identify lots of opportunities potentially to cut out cost-wise, driving down resources that we want from a Plan A point of view. Our marketing team, if I'm honest, Steve Sharp, our marketing director, probably wasn't the keenest advocate of Plan A in the early days, but actually as he started to understand how our customers are really engaged by this, how we can start to use this to differentiate ourselves, how it does separate us apart, he's come on board, and swapping is an initiative really driven by him. So I think it's something we keep working at. I think you do need big leadership at the top, but when you do get people on board, how can you use them as advocates? So, we've identified, and we keep doing this, who are the advocates, who are the people in their business areas that are really driving this forward, and can we use them to engage and enthuse their colleagues, because actually they understand their business areas better than we do. They know their colleagues, they understand what's really going to get them on board. We really use that as well to drive it across the business.
Moving on to our next question, which is from Simon. How did you go about awareness training for your retail teams and keep momentum?
So we do training right across the board in different ways. So it really starts from when you join the business. So part of the induction process, Plan A is a key part of that. It hits at different levels. So depending on what role you're doing, with embedded training, and clearly people doing different roles will be involved in different things. So, if you're working back of house in store, there'll be a lot of training around recycling, around segregation, but potentially around, things like keeping the cold door shut and that type of thing in terms of reducing energy usage. So I think we've got training as part of induction. We've then got job-specific training, but then across, and that very applies to head office as well, and that does get a lot more technical in head office. So some of our buying departments and what have you, where we're doing a lot more dives into particular topics such as sustainable timber or chemicals or whatever it may be, so that they really do their job. But then I think really what we try and do, and we change year on year as we make better progress and people have a better understanding. So I say in the early days of Plan A, the comms was very top level and very sort of progress focused, whereas a lot of the communication and events we run now are far more educational and informative, as people now want to start saying, well, yeah, I heard about this great palm oil stuff, but we've really what palm oil and why is it an issue? So we're trying to change the communication so it's far more educational. In a way that people can decide if they want to get more involved, then can do, but if they don't have to. But it's something we do continually work at.
Okay, our next question is from Claire, who says, have you implemented any non-financial incentives that have particularly worked well, other than the risk rating that you showed?
I think there are lots of examples, but I think the big ones are the ones mentioned before. So recognition is a really big one, and for our store colleagues coming up to head office for a day is a big deal. Meeting some of the senior directors is a really big deal. And we do, where we've got colleagues that have done a great job, we try and promote that. So we had once ring up from store. He had a report that was printed morning automatically on the printer, and he registered to say, we don't use this report, can you stop it? We to IT investigated, turned out that report was printed every morning in every single store. And it'd been doing a long time, but no one had bothered to to phone and say this is wrong, and we stopped it. And it saved us, that one report, we saved us hundreds of thousands of pounds. And there was a big feature in our staff magazine about it. And he come up and wrote about it. He got his photo in the magazine. For him, that was a really big deal. So I think we try lots of different things, and the cash incentive clearly is a good one. But I think that does need to set in the back just people wanting to do the right thing, and where they do it, really getting recognised for it. And competition, particularly in our stores, and particularly in our teams love competition. Our finance colleagues recently in head office did a swapping competition. So who could bring in the most amount of garments to swap, so clothes to be recycled. And they did all sorts of analysis over number of garments per head and all this type of thing, and it made a big deal out of it. There was hundreds of garments that came. I think it was 4,500 garments that came in across sort of 40 people, but he got involved in it, and they really wanted us to be the department that won. So.
Great. We are running out of time. Are you able to hold on the line a bit longer, Adam?
Okay. Yes.
Great. We'll get through 3 more questions then. The first of which is from Caroline, who says, with the benefit of hindsight, is there anything that you would have done differently or more quickly when designing the programme?
I think there are lots we'd have liked to have done quicker. I'm sure we could have done any of it quicker, because a lot of it we had to learn along the way. But, things like getting that clarity around scope, owner data, KPIs, it probably took us the first 2 years really to bottom that out. A challenge, therefore, in some areas has been that because we weren't able to get there quicker, we've not made as much progress as we'd like. And even things today, some of the more difficult commodity items, palm oil, timber, some of these things where, we really have to get lots of complex information out of our supply base. The tools and the systems just aren't in place. And I think that's one of the biggest learnings is you've got to get after that as soon as possible, because then you've got that real understanding. You're forever, you're difficult to make the progress, very difficult to know what you need to focus on and what are the areas that are going to drive things forward in the best way. I think generally one of the other learnings we always speak about is in the early days of Plan A, we had a sort of central Plan A budget. So I mentioned the 40 million we expected to spend. And what that meant was people used to come to us and say, I want to do this, driving towards Plan A, can we have some money? And what we quickly is because the budgets that these guys controlled on part of their normal day-to-day budgets, they didn't have the chips. They probably didn't work quite as hard to drive the best deals, to innovate, to push the boundaries. And within I think by the end of the first year, we changed that model completely. So it was really part of their everyday operating plans that they needed to secure the funding they needed to do. And what that meant is they really didn't take no for an answer. They really didn't take the first proposal that came on the table, and so much of our progress has been made by people saying, no, I can't do it if it's more expensive, and I can't do it if it makes life more difficult and it slows things down. Let's find a better way of doing it. And the number of innovation and different ways of working and bring people together that has meant, we've driven the progress in a sustainable way. So when Mark Bollen joined the business, there was nothing he looked at and said, stop doing that. It's costing so much money. I don't understand why we're doing it. Because we work really hard to make sure everything we're doing is the right thing to do from a Plan A perspective, but also from a business perspective. And zero waste to landfill's a great example. So it's a commitment we achieved last year. So we recycle every bit of waste across our business, including construction projects. That required, significant changes to the way our budgets were managed, in terms of ownership, in terms of the way the business had operated for many, many years. But it was really only because we'd set the clear targets and because we'd got the information that we could show we needed to make these big changes. And it forced parts of the business to work together that never really worked together before. And actually then started having the waste team ringing up the retail team or the marketing team saying, look guys, this is the waste that's coming through, can we stop it? And so we've actually saved about £5 million a year on reducing waste. Our waste team being able to feed back to different parts of the business where the waste is coming from. So I think lots of learnings there.
Our penultimate question is from Shane, who says, which channels worked best for engaging staff in stores?
Staff in stores is quite challenging for us because majority of them are not sat in front of a computer, and therefore the message is generally delivered by word of mouth, which is challenging because you can't always guarantee that the person delivering that message is going to deliver it in the same enthusiasm and the same tone of voice that you would do it in. We have lots of methods. So we have notice boards. There is a website and a blog. Actually, we have lots of people go onto the blog, ask questions, and talk amongst themselves. But I think the best thing we've done and we continue to look at is videos. The video work really well because we can really get across a story or a message with all motivation and enthusiasm and showcase the innovation in a way that we can absolutely see when it lands on the shop floor, that they'll get to see it and they'll get the message in the way that we want them to see it. So for us, videos in stores work really well.
Our final question is from Suzanne, who says, can you describe how the entire employee engagement plan was developed? What the role of HR, communications, environmental experts, etc.?
It's certainly developed over the years. So I suspect in the early days, it really was our internal communications department supported by the Plan A team that really drove it. But over the years, as we've succeeded, and we're not perfect, but as we've got better at embedding it within different parts of the business, and as those parts of the business have started to understand their piece of the puzzle, their role in this, it's got a lot more collaborative now. So if I just think about engagement, you've got comms team, you've got our team, and I've got someone that's very heavily involved with that. Our retail communications team, our HR employee engagement team. We've got representatives from retail that from themselves that sit on that, and so that's a very collaborative group that sort of sit down to discuss strategy and approach. And our marketing colleagues are very much and PR colleagues are very much involved in that as well. Separate from that, though, every business area, every department has got their own comms that they do, from team newsletters to huddles to whatever it may be. And because Plan A is such a key part of our business, and everyone knows this, actually there is just communication that gets created all the time. So our logistics team will regularly talk to their colleagues about all the fantastic work that they've been doing to support Plan A, because they're really proud of it and they've got a fantastic story to tell. So they really just there's a lot that just happens organically, and we get asked a lot to go and talk to different parts of the business. So I'm with our national colleagues next week talking about Plan A and giving them an update. So lots of different things, and it continues to evolve, but it is a collaborative effort.
So we're out of time for today's session, I'm afraid. I am aware that there were quite a few questions that we didn't have time for. Adam, if you're okay with this, I was thinking maybe I could email those over to you and you could get back to the people who asked those questions after the session.
You say no, but yes, happy to.
Okay, great. So I'd like to thank you all for participating in today's webinar and for your questions and comments. And thank you especially to Adam for your great presentation. Posting the recording of this webinar on 2 Degrees either later today or early tomorrow, and I'll send over the link to you when that's up. So thank you for joining, and enjoy the rest of your